Good afternoon. Welcome to day 2 of SVG Europe's FutureSPORT 2020. My name is Will Strauss. I'm one of the editors here at SVG Europe. I'll be your light and guide for the next 90 minutes or so as we concentrate on sports production and broadcasting's presentation and on screen, with an emphasis on graphics and data. We have an amazing lineup of speakers for you today, and I would like to personally thank each of them for giving up their time. We'll be hearing from all sides of the sports broadcasting community today: manufacturers, broadcasters, production companies, and federations and associations. Our keynote Zoom-side chat is with La Liga's Melchior Soler. But before we begin, a big thank you to our title sponsor, Panasonic, who we will now hear from. Please welcome Product Marketing Manager Anna Arkatova, who's going to provide us with an insight into smart live production. Over to you, Anna.
Thank you, Will. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us as we kick off the second day of SVG Europe FutureSPORT event. And today, I'd like to touch upon some of the key trends shaping sports broadcast and introduce you the second episode of Panasonic Live series. With the smart live production concept in mind, Panasonic is constantly enhancing the usability of its products, making integration easier and providing cost efficiencies to our customers. With the pandemic surging around the world, a number of processes are forced in video production, and here are to name some of them. The accelerated acceptance of PTZs in sport broadcast. We are proud to say that Panasonic is leading the #1 position in the European PTZ camera market when it comes to broadcast and live events. IP video and control for remote operation supporting COVID-safe productions. And a wide variety of IP transition protocols are adopted by Panasonic camera systems, including ST2110, NDI, NDI-HX, and SRT. It leads to the opportunity to overcome social distancing gaps over the network to enable virtual appearances of presenters and guests in the studio. With the UI100 being the first Panasonic PTZ camera to support SRT protocol, it provides high-quality video transmission with low latency, and even in unstable network environments, which is vitally useful in live production. With the sports return to the stadiums, but without the audience attending, the need to provide engaging content, dynamic graphics, and statistics is transforming the way the sports are being produced, with emerging usage of AR and VR. The UI100 and UI150 are the first PTZ cameras on the market that support 3D protocol to provide position data notification and to be compatible with AR and VR vendors. Implementing 3D in our PTZs greatly contributed to make AR and VR affordable for many customers, and it opened new doors creatively. It creates incredible possibilities for advertisement and entertainment with virtually no boundaries. Now, let me take you to Barcelona, where we cover the technology and products in more detail.
To adoption of IP technology, which helps to create safe, efficient, and flexible environments for work and collaboration.
Where cameras, robotic systems, and live switchers are connected on the network, allowing this camera to be used with all the main AR and VR vendors as an off-the-shelf solution for virtual systems like the one we are currently located in.
The use of virtual reality can help presenters close social distancing gaps that we currently have to work with.
Our brand new UI100 PTZ camera supports SRT for live video transmission, bringing the best quality over the most unstable networks.
It becomes more important than ever to maintain high production values of live stream.
Now it's possible to equip your production with robotic systems that are fully integrated with our PTZ cameras, providing a high degree of automation. This system is ideal for extended reality studios, and it provides a more immersive experience on the virtual graphics. The UHS 500 is format independent, allowing you to mix any kind of HD and 4K sources with minimum delay.
We wanted to take it a step further and create extended reality environment using the latest technology like LED walls and media servers.
Thank you for watching, and to find out more about our live series, please follow our website. Thank you, see you soon, and take care.
Thanks very much, Anna. Coming up, we've got our vendor perspective session, which is going to dive deep into graphics for sports television. But first, let's hear some insights from our keynote speaker, La Liga's audio-visual director, Melchior Soler, who's in conversation with our very own Heather Mclean.
Bienvenidos a la del mundo de la Liga Santander. Donde el fútbol vuelve en esta nueva normalidad. Es la Liga volver a ganar.
Hi, I'm Heather Mclean, editor at SVG Europe, and I'm here today with Melchior Soler, Director of Audiovisual at La Liga. Hello, Melchior.
Good morning. Fine, we are here, yes.
We are. Fantastic sizzle reel there. The word risk that came up in that video definitely sums up the angle that La Liga has taken with its innovations this year, which many would shy away from. Tell me why taking risks in technological innovations has been the driving force for La Liga's strategy, not only in 2020, but in recent years as well.
Yes, we think that La Liga is not only football games, but pure and true entertainment. So we introduce innovations, technical innovations, as soon as they are ready, and we think can be something else for the audiences. We check and try anything in the market that comes up, and we have done this since 5 years ago. And we select out of those the ones we find more useful.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And you mean you've achieved a lot in terms of new on-screen innovations this year alone, when many of us have, well, all of us really have been in lockdown. From new data-driven augmented reality graphics through to virtualized fans, which got a lot of comments. Why did you decide to go down that route this year, and how do these innovations help you to tell the story of a match?
Well, this season was a real challenge because we didn't have the audiences attending the stadiums. So we had the idea to continue with the same audiovisual perception that our audiences had in the past. So we thought that doing virtual audio was interesting, and on top doing also virtual audiences. And well, we tried to find the technologies to do that. It was not easy. Audio, we already had the recordings from previous years. So the audio is something that is been more achievable, and audio also is something that the audiences already know, because sitcoms have audio, virtual audio, no? They have laughs, and they have claps, and they have many things that the audiences accept as usual, no? So our audio is being easily to be accepted and to be introduced. But on top, we have done the virtual audiences. This was really difficult, and other leagues have not done it because they have not found the right way to do it. So it's not that we are the only ones doing, we are the only ones capable to do it, because when you see the game, the camera moves, but the virtual audience is there and is static. And when the ball also moves over the virtual audience, this ball has to be seen. And on top, all this has to be direct, live, no? So it's been very, very difficult, but we have achieved to have the same audiovisual perception or similar audiovisual perception that we had in the past when the audiences were in the stadium.
Brilliant. Okay, and then I mean, capturing that data must be quite difficult, especially as you say, it's all live, it's directed live. You know, you've got loads of different angles happening, and the ball's flying around. So how do you capture that data, and how have you actually created the augmentation? You know, what were the challenges there?
Data. We already captured this data since some years ago, because we use technology from the company Caironego to take this data with 8 cameras that are in the stadium. And also we capture some data, perform data, which comes from Perform Stats. And then with our own technology inside in La Liga, we mixed everything and we do a program which is called Media Coach. This program is to help the clubs, the trainers, the sport directors of each club to see the performance of their players. But then this program was so complete, there was so many data that we thought that some of this data we could introduce it in the broadcasting. And this is what we are doing now, and especially introducing this season, what we call statistic graphics.
Cool. Okay. And what's the fan response been to that? You know, and all those different things you've done this year. You know, does it differ? Have you noticed a difference? You know, country by country, and what have you learned?
Well, we have learned that broadcasters are very happy having what we are supplying. In some countries, there is the possibility to switch from one signal to the real signal, and the real signal is only used by 10% of the audiences. So the audiences, they really like these virtual audio and audiences that we are introducing, also the new graphics, and all the feedback we having from broadcasters is very good. So we are very proud of having achieved that. Yes.
Cool. Okay. And why is this type of innovation? I mean, you guys are really good at, you know, putting your neck out there and trying new things. Why is it important not only for La Liga but for this industry?
Well, because we think that we are not only, as I was telling you, a football game. We are an entertainment product. So we want to be in the top of what we are delivering to the audiences and to the industry. So we are ready to innovate anything that is available.
And where do you see graphics and data in sports broadcasting going in the next year in terms of technologies and trends, given the current situation in Europe?
Well, what we are going to do is introduce more statistic data. We have introduced now a percentage of attacks and places where the teams have their attacks, a percentage on when they kick off corners, when they kick off free launches, penalties. And this will be enhanced during all this season. because we think that all this data live, it's very short in the games, it's short, but it's live, and it helps a lot to understand the game and the possibilities, no? So we have started with aerial cameras. Now with 16 stadiums have fixed aerial cameras. We have the Intel 360 that is also enhanced this year in some stadiums. And now we have introduced, and we will be introducing drones in each stadium. So we, instead of using helicopters, which are very expensive, we will use those drones, but in as many stadiums as possible. So yes, and all this together with the statistic graphics, we think that, well, it's this situation without attendance in the stadium is also a challenge to improve our broadcasting and make feel the same audiovisual perception that our audiences were used to.
Great. Keep pushing the innovations for all those fans at home.
Yes,
Thank
correct.
you very much, Melchior. Thank you.
Thank you to you.
Thank you to Melchior for sharing his insights. La Liga is certainly putting a great deal of effort into making the match coverage ever more engaging for TV viewers, not least in the absence of fans inside the stadiums. Up next is today's vendor perspective session. As we mentioned yesterday, with no trade shows this year, many broadcasters and producers have told us that they don't feel that they've been able to properly keep up with what the technology developers and suppliers are doing and thinking. To help rectify this, we've brought together a selection of our sponsors to provide insight and thought leadership on how on-screen graphics and data can be used within sports broadcasting and production, and how this area of the market will develop in the future. Guiding you through this discussion is SVG Editorial Director Ken Kirschbauer.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's vendor panel for FutureSPORT. This is day 2. Great to see you all. We have a great panel. We're going to discuss, I guess we're going to really zero in on graphics, augmented reality, virtual advertising, a whole bunch of things in the digital environments. I think it goes without saying, without fans, that a lot of leagues, federations, teams, clubs, broadcasters are taking advantage of wide open spaces to drop in some new AR elements, virtual advertising. So we have a really great panel. We're joined by Andrew Heimbold, Reality Check Systems Chief Executive. How are you, Andrew?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Welcome. Steve Plunkett, Supponor Chief Product Officer. Steve, how are you?
I'm very good, Ken. Thanks. Great to be here.
And Nick Baily, AE Live Chief Executive. Hi, Nick.
Hello. Thanks, Ken. Good to be here.
Gideon Ferber, Ross Video Virtual Services Director.
Hello, hello.
Very good.
Good to
and
be
our
here.
co-chair and chair for today's session, Tim Stott, HBS Digital Executive Producer. Hey, Tim, how are you?
Very well. Good to see you all.
Good to see everybody. So we're covering many vast time zones today. Andrew is in Arizona. I'm in New York. We got folks clearly in the UK and in Europe. So Tim, I wanted to kind of start with you from the HBS perspective. What has the last 8 months been like for you and your team? And, you know, as far as the graphics environment or AR, VR, I mean, even as just someone who's watching a lot of sports and consuming it, what have you been seeing? What are you guys grappling with as far as those technologies in this new age?
Well, this new age, this new normal. First thing is, I don't think we have to fear the new normal. Just, it's exciting, right? Where we are now is exciting. I think we can agree. And the second thing is quick backstory. What we've been doing in the past 2 years is looking at content creators, super fans, and how we can bring their contributions inside the ecosystem of the sports we represent. And this has been really interesting because we have sporting federations who are seeing this conversation go on downstream and they're thinking, hang on a second, why don't I get a piece of that? So I think we've done 6 global sports in 2 years and with contributors from 3 different continents. So when COVID landed like a wrecking ball, it's like, here we are, this is what we're talking about. And the tools that we provide to those content creators are really, really interesting. Not just because of the technical solutions. From this round table, I see a lot of people very active in this area, not just because of the technical solutions, but from my perspective, also about how it changes the story. Because what we learn is the tools that you give people very quickly change the story in terms of, do these tools allow for collaboration? Are they just a contribution tool? If people are seeing each other's work through these remote tools, that is automatically going to change the story, because other content creators, contributors are going to pitch in and say, what about this? What about this? So we've been in the middle of all this, and it's just been a blast. It's like we were kind of 6 months ahead of the crowd, which feels good. In terms of graphics and the tools we provide, this is a really interesting one. So we have a content creator making a very passionate case from his bedroom about which team's better, which athlete is better, and he wants to express himself. So straight away, it starts off right with someone just screaming into their mobile phone. Next thing you know, he's looking for amateur graphic solutions to make his case. Look here, this number of points, this. So I'm getting these contributions with lurid colors and Comic Sans, right? From some tool that he's found on the internet. And we're thinking, well, that's great. That's how he expresses himself. It's totally off brand. It's totally outside the way that a professional production entity would express itself. They have brand guidelines and graphics toolkits. And the question arises next is, to what extent do we actually make him part of the establishment by giving him these tools? And to what extent do we kind of step back and say, we hired you because we want you to do your own thing? So this is where we are right now. And the next thing, of course, is obviously people get better and better technical skills really quickly. So we find someone talking about a sport and they know nothing, and 12 weeks later they're asking for the type of tools that you guys provide, right? They say, oh, have you got something which will do this? If I can put the bumper on myself, I don't have to send it to someone in an edit suite to do old media style. If I can I do my own lower thirds? So that's a conversation. And 2022 will be very different in this regard from 2019 was.
Excellent, great. So Andrew, you and I have been discussing these sort of trends for the last 15 years, I guess. So what's your take from Arizona? What's your sense on what the last 6-7 months have meant?
I think we can all agree that there's been a lot of change in the industry, and that's the nature of our business, right? Just in general, there's always new technologies available, but certainly the last 7-8 months have accelerated the need for really rethinking, recalibrating, looking at what can be done differently to engage the users, engage the fans, and create different experiences. I just remember just in our talks over the last couple of years, we knew cloud-based solutions were coming and people were working on it, remote capabilities, but when they were going to actually become mainstream, where people could use them on a mass level, get in remotely, photographics, work from home, we weren't quite sure. Well, now we're sure. It was this year because you didn't have a choice.
Right.
You had to get it going. And it was really interesting from Reality Check. We had, working with some of our e-gaming partners, had built traditional broadcast packages at the beginning of the year. We were ready to go on the road. All of a sudden, to just stop, drop everything, and rebuild them, looking for new cloud-based solutions. So we've seen just such a change, such an acceleration in this space. And it's a bit uncomfortable as a business when you sort of look at this and say, wait, this is how I've been doing it for 20 years. But then you sort of look at the tools that are out there, the capabilities, and what your clients and viewers are looking for. And you realize you just have to be a little more flexible, open to trying these things. And it's been really, quite honestly, a great learning experience for us and our team, not only working remote, but working with a lot of these new tools. So it's interesting to see what's capable, what's possible. It's realizing that some of the tools are great that are out there, and then there's some areas where there could be more development. It's very hard when you're working remote to be in sync with everyone, to be that frame accurate live production that we're used to. So really trying to put the pieces together to create effective productions that give the broadcast quality experience to your end viewer. But overall, it's been a challenging and learning experience, but it's exciting to see the innovation that's been happening.
So I'm going to actually ask you what Tim sort of posed. This is the wild card question. I always love these. So Tim brought up the topic of, do you let people just be who they are, or do you try to get them to fall into line, I guess? And what's your sense as someone who's, and all of you can kind of chime in on this as well. What's the best way to handle that kind of situation?
Well, the clients we're working with our e-gaming leagues, they try to keep their broadcasts on rails as much as they can. So we're still building toolkits to keep them on brand and on point. But of course, there's always requests, new things going out there. So with everyone being remote, it's still kind of hard to do that. But you see a new type of broadcast emerging where there's a little more personality and people having different opinions, different points of view, and a little more flexibility on the, I think, the type of rigid broadcast feeds that we're used to.
Sure. Yeah, Gideon, so I want to bring you in on this because here in the US, obviously, I do want to get into some of the augmented reality, and then I'll also make sure that that Steve, you discuss this as well, because I know you guys are big on this as well. Here in the US, Sunday Night Football, probably it is the biggest TV show on television. You guys are front and center with that every week. Yeah. I know some of the guys who are on your team who, they used to work for colleges and now they're working with you guys. What's your sense on AR? In this new world, and is it filling in a gap? Are you seeing more stadiums take advantage of no fans? I see it on golf courses all the time.
So, really good question. But if I may just comment on what Andrew just said, we see it as well. I mean, we find ourselves having to cope with really interesting scenarios. Especially again with esports, where you find your, talents, I'm not sure how you call them, players all over the world in their houses. The leagues themselves can't really regulate what they say, or you have less control over their emotions and reactions. And also our teams are all over the world as well. So, we have a cloud-based solution, of course. So the core system is sitting somewhere in Cincinnati, but the design team is all over, India, and then some in the US, some in Canada, and then the operation team is all over the place. So it kind of forces you to adapt to very different scenarios than we used to up until very recently. So I totally agree with Andrew on that one. Then regarding the AR, so yes, we see a massive increase, and as you said, I mean, NBC, of course, is our flagship account. We see in general a big increase in demand for virtual as a whole. So not necessarily just AR, but of course AR is a big part of it. But virtual studios, AR, XR, it's all over the place now. So we see a big increase in that, and I think, again, COVID accelerated the acceptance of that medium. When you can't go into your physical studio, then why not go virtual? I mean, it's you have smaller teams, you can't be on site, you need different ways to engage and keep, audience engaged. So virtual definitely solve some of these, needs. So absolutely.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think it's interesting to see how the camera tracking technology, all these things have really kind of enabled people to continue to kind of give a good looking show and having some nice integrated virtual environments. Steve, I know from the Supponor perspective, over the last year or so, we've talked with some of your folks from your team as far as virtual advertising. And then you can talk about some of the other stuff that you guys are working on. But I know that virtual advertising, it's interesting when you go back a year ago when I talked to people on the, I'm not going to say the HBS side of things, but some of the broadcasters would say, you know what, it's sort of okay, but eh. But now all of a sudden you have lost revenues. You're looking for any way to create new revenues. What's your sense on the virtual advertising from the Supponor perspective and just in general the last 6 to 7 months?
Yeah, maybe if I do the 6 to 8 month piece, because it'll be quick. Very much the same sensation as a business, acceleration of trends that were maybe anticipated to pan out over the next 2 to 3 years, really compressed into very short time frames. The initial sort of shock at sport not being on television and what will we do next. We figured out how to work collectively as a distributed organization, and then we found that in the development side we had more free time. We didn't have the the Monday morning, post-match development impact. And so we suddenly had this bounty of extra available hours, and a research function in particular was able to do an awful lot more things with AI and machine learning. So in many ways, it's been very positive for us from the software perspective. But on the commercial side, yes, I mean, I think as sport came back on TV, we were almost overwhelmed initially with lots and lots of requests. Could we use VR to do X, Y, Z? And every sensible and crazy scenario you can imagine was sort of proposed and requested. And there's been an increase in the more traditional advertising space, and people realizing, yes, there's monetary value here that is maybe more important now than it was previously, because we've had financial impact across the industry, and that's driven a lot of inbound requests to understand how we can deploy. And that leads on to the last piece, maybe to wrap my bit up. The deployment of our services traditionally has been driven by the production organizations and how they prefer us to sit. Now we operate in parallel and downstream from the production anyway, but we typically do that on location, equipment at the venue. And despite having spent some time preparing for the connected alternatives, obviously this year has meant that's come absolutely to the forefront and even gone through iterations incredibly quickly. So being able to remotely produce, we scrambled around to think, how could we get to territories where we didn't have a presence and apply equipment in data centers how would we get people in those buildings? So there was all of those early stage limitations. And very recently, over the last few months, some of the cloud vendors providing bare metal GPU powered hardware that's actually very interesting and very appropriate maybe for the sort of use cases we had, which tend to be quite demanding in the graphics space. And some of those vendors also putting in uncompressed or at least network capacity that can carry uncompressed signals. So our options within 8 months have gone from, can we deploy in a remote facility? Where would we rent some space? Where do we buy some servers? How can we ship them around the world? To maybe even being able to quickly go to the next stage of that. And the only thing from our current conversations, lots of our different customers and their broadcast partners and production organizations have different perspectives on what's sort of acceptable now, and that may change. So some organizations still want infrastructure, particularly graphics infrastructure, close to the production, but they're happy for the people to be somewhere else. And at least that's a step forward even in itself. And that gives you a little bit more deployment flexibility. Others are very happy just to send you the program signal and please insert the advertising, send it back to us. And we don't really care where you do it or how you do it. So yeah, it's been an amazing sort of roller coaster, but I would say positive one, at the end of it.
Excellent, great. So Nick, from the AE Live perspective, what have you been witnessing from some of your clients and what they're asking for?
Sure. I mean, I think to sort of pick up on Andrew's point about flexibility, I think that's probably been a key word for us in 2020. We moved very quickly from that model of, men and kit and software on site at venue to this kind of flexible pick and mix of operators on site still, which is still predominant on the return of sport. We are still sending people to site, but that's very much in a more controlled environment. Operators off-site, but dialing into render engines at particular hubs, operators situated at hubs, operators situated here at our own operation center, renderers here, renderers there, renderers on site, renderers in the cloud. It's kind of all manner of different scenarios, and having the flexibility to do that. I think our focus as a business, and I'm sure Andrew can back this up, but I think having sports stop for 3 or 4 months, as it did really for us globally, was a unique opportunity for a business that's all about live on-site delivery to the minute. Suddenly you had this huge resource that had time on its hands for R&D. So for us, it was about making sure that we did a lot of work to ensure that all of our applications, data collection, data management, play out, could all be done across the cloud effectively, seamlessly, so that once we split up all of these little components, we were well placed to sort of continue our normal level of service. So whether that mean first first level data on site, perhaps AR tracking data from the cameras on site, off-site data capture, second level operators here, renderers at a broadcaster like BT. We can do all of that, hopefully, and it can be as seamless as possible. So it's been great, and I sort of echo what everybody on here has said, including Steve, that it's been really positive. We've all leaped forward very, very quickly, and you know, some kind of established norms have been broken, and it's a good situation, I think.
So the reality is, isn't it, that we'll never see the same numbers of people on site again, right? Surely this is kind of a watershed. Everyone agree on that?
No, agreed. I think we are still seeing that. I mean, we're back, thankfully, to near normal levels of elite sport here in the UK. And if I look at sort of last weekend, we were doing a mixture. We were operating some games for BT from here, connecting to renderers at BT, but the majority of what we did was still a traditional OB. And I think that's purely because some of those broadcasters federations just haven't got that workflow right yet. I think it will come. And I think all of us just need to be ready and flexible and able to meet that demand.
Yeah. So, well, Tim, I know HBS obviously clearly at the center of some major global events, you know, and I think to one that took place in Russia, and there were some, you know, there were a couple of virtual studios on site, but, you know, people still they were all over town. Some people were in obviously Red Square. You know, and I know that the goal for your organization and for OBS, for example, the Olympics, you always want to shrink the size of the people on site, right? So the compound, the broadcast center can get a little smaller. What's your sense looking towards next year as far as, you know, do you think you're going to see more graphics people and editors and predators working just remotely? And who do you think will be on site for some of these big major global events?
You'll understand that I'm choosing my words very carefully here.
Yes.
Because exactly right. The first question is, when it comes to things like graphic insertion, can we move it back to the IBC? And the question after that is, well, do we actually need to move it back to the IBC, or can it be in Southern England? Can it be in Germany? Wherever. Without giving away family secrets, those conversations are very active now. From my end, it's much more. It's exactly what you said. It's about predators and people offering skills people who are already downstream from all the kind of content solutions that you guys are talking about, right? If they're at the IBC, they're still the last person in the chain of all this incredible broadcast technology. Could they be doing that from somewhere else? The short answer, of course, is yes. And then you've got questions about part of the attraction is the fact that they get to jump on a plane and fly to places like Moscow. So it even becomes, as I told you, I'm choosing my words carefully here. It even becomes a recruitment question, right? What sort of people are going to answer the call and put the rest of their career on hold to do this? So that is a conversation we're in the middle of.
Well, I think what's interesting, what I've seen as far as going to a lot of these events clearly and observing, you know, you keep thinking it's going to get a lot emptier, and it doesn't. You see more content creators on site, right? So yeah, when I visit Phil Pauly at NBC, you know, I mean, they got the team back in Stanford that's doing a lot of work too, and they're just kind of they're moving content back and forth. But you know, so the beauty is you'll see more people on site with reporters and camera crews creating content. Then again, is going to pump through all of your systems and technologies and need to be created and made to sparkle and shine and look great. So, you know, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. And I think that I do want to get into this a little bit, because when I talk graphics over the years, as you all know, we got the PS5 coming out, we got the new Xbox, and it's always been about that engine, right? And the Unreal Engine specifically has been a big driver. But now we have this cloud thing going on, right? You have the Amazon CDI situation where I talked with them, and they have some fascinating things. So what's your take on processing power and speed? Because for a long time, it seemed like, from my standpoint, graphics was all about how quickly you could do stuff. You needed hardware, you needed acceleration, blah, 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 you needed CPU. Is the cloud environment more powerful than a hardware-based system? Anybody would like to tackle that
one really quickly? And
sure.
It's different. There's different requirements. Once you go into the cloud, you don't necessarily know exactly what machines you're getting unless you provision certain machines. So, you know, coming from a background of working with, you know, ROS expressions and VisRT, We're now looking at what we need to do remote, and we're working with a product that we've been partnering with called Singular.live. And instead of using OpenGL acceleration, they're using just basic HTML. So as you'd guess, you don't get all the bells and whistles of real-time 3D animation, but the benefit, works on basically almost any device that can render a web page, which is most devices in the cloud, most lower end servers, which makes it incredibly flexible. So we were able to take that system when we worked with this e-gaming league that had to go remote into cloud and integrate with their production system, which was the Grass Valley AMP system. And because it was all cloud-based, it could natively support HTML overlays. So we were able to just take the output from Singular and put it in the cloud, use all the exact same workflow and put it up there. Now, like I mentioned before, you can't get all the polish that you might normally get in a 3D, but it does all the basic elements very well, all the lower thirds, full screens, graphics, and it's real time. So it synchronizes in real time, lets the operators be anywhere and work with the system anywhere. So, you know, there's compromises and trade-offs. You get incredible flexibility. There's no hardware. It updates immediately in real time. And what I find also interesting, the value proposition on that, it's a lot cheaper because you don't need the hardware and software, and it can do most of the things that people would need. So it opens up a whole new market, sort of democratizing in a way the industry, allowing not just the top tier broadcasters to use graphics and overlay, as you referred to earlier, Ken, with the branding and being on point, but it allows all the other secondary content creators or the shoulder program that's being created for you know, the .com or the web only, the secondary content. So you see new opportunities actually arise out of this. If you didn't have to build a, you know, a high-end production system, what other content could you create to appeal to other audiences, different demographics? So again, there's unique opportunities and there's just simply differences. Better or worse isn't a discussion. It's where are the opportunities to reach your fans and engage them.
Sure, Nick.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. I think the technology is all about the particular audience. It's incredibly flexible. I think it's not the power of a Vizarti or a Ross. You know, that real kind of polish you can do and the 3D animation. But I think it just gives you that real ability to do multiple feeds as well. I mean, for us, we're investing in that for obviously clients who want to stream directly to their fans, but also as secondary feeds. So it's great for us to be able to do different demographic feeds, different language feeds, all sorts. And as Andrew said, it's low cost. You can produce a good product on it. You can make it complementary to a top level blue chip broadcast as well, but also obviously it serves that lower tier market very well, and again just gives that other option for us. But yeah, it's got a real future, and we need to embrace it for sure.
Sure.
And if you don't mind, I want to take bring the discussion back to the high performance, high end graphics. And it's interesting. I mean, we've obviously, you know, we see the trends. We have to respond. So two points here. One is the advantage if and when we can actually implement it properly. The advantage is that you can spin up any number of engines whenever you want it. So you allocate machines, you allocate resources, and you can actually spin up multiple engines without the hardware on site. So that's definitely appealing. However, at least from what we've seen so far, the performance are just not quite there yet, unless you go to the extreme high-end machines. So and that kind of leads me to the other aspect of it. What we're trying to do is the other way around. So instead of going into the Amazon side of things, or we're using through Amazon, but we're providing our own cloud solution. So we provide the equipment on site, on our premises, and instead of spinning systems remotely, we allow access to contributors, to commentators, to talents through a web portal, through web access. We bring in feeds from different sources. Again, whether it's NDI or you name it. So we bring the sources externally into our platform, And then we still manage to get the high performance, that we need for our solutions locally, and still be able to provide the full end-to-end package. So you can still have your bells and whistles, of running on Unreal 4, and with all the reflections and shaders and ray tracing and everything that Unreal provides, but without the need to try and now allocate incredible amount of resources over AWS or any other platform. So kind of a middle way solution. We tried spinning, Voyager, our Unreal-based platform on as a VM, but again, it becomes very tricky very quickly. I mean, trying to get the right resources at the right time and synchronize everything. So I think there is still some work to be done before we can adopt it fully.
So what I heard there was the selling point I've heard from a few vendors is not how high powered is to use Gideon bells and whistles, not how high powered is our solution, it's how low powered your end users platform can be to make it work. So it's like, wow, they're actually thinking of the guy I want to do this doesn't have that high spec machine and has poor connectivity. Can it still work?
Yeah, exactly. Anyone can log in from anywhere in the world and still you'll have the same broadcast quality output at the end.
Sure. Steve?
Yeah, on the cloud thing, it's the last 12 months again, independent of the COVID situation, has been fascinating, because a year ago, 2 years ago, we were saying what compromises would we need to make to run our systems in the cloud, and they were significant. There was a lack of deterministic performance from having a hypervisor in between your graphics system and the underlying GPU. The CPU was equally non-deterministic. The network transport between our components, which today in SDI land is very well understood and very deterministic. But you mentioned CDI, things like that can provide high-speed, reliable transport to be able to do things where they're having to compress signals in between a machine, because we have a chain of nodes that perform certain operations. So we need to be able to move signals between them very quickly. And it seems as if that sort of high-speed network with pretty inexpensive, $7 an hour for an 8 GPU, 384 gigs of RAM, 48 core CPU box. When you think you can gain access to that, and it's got a network that I can actually use for live video, that's impressive. And then finally, in the last 2 months, we've had this spectacular performance gain, both from NVIDIA and now with AMD. The Ampere architecture and the Big Navi, providing sort of once in a decade or even more leaps. And the PC I'm using for this call has a very expensive 2080 Ti that I foolishly bought, I think in May, which is now it looks like a terrible decision. But we can now buy something like that for $300, the low end of the range, let alone what you can do with the 3080, 3090s and things. So I think we have this interesting thing with it. The cloud is becoming more performant, and you're getting closer to the metal. The network performance is getting equally good, and GPUs have gone this once in a decade. So I think a year from now, we'll see how that shakes out, because all of the engineers and developers will play and push the capabilities of those new systems. And I'm fascinated to see where we can be in 12 months' time.
Yeah. Well, Tim, I think you kind of started the conversation with the very interesting point that people will the cost of entry of becoming a graphics professional is obviously very low right now. So it's just mission creep, right? It's sort of like it's a wonderful thing, because you have that ability to kind of leapfrog and go up and up. To Gideon's point, I definitely think in certain situations people will want the manufacturer of the equipment to maintain those assets rather than having to rely on Amazon, because the last thing you want. I remember another major global event that was taking place in Brazil, where there were two manufacturers who were in an IBC in Brazil, and they were both pointing fingers at each other. And I think to Gideon's point, if there's a performance problem, Ross, you don't want to have you pointing at AWS and AWS pointing back at you. So if you have that environment, then you have the cloud one, which may be a little more cost effective, but not quite as robust. It's a fascinating time. So closing comments. So Tim, do you want to take us home here?
Yeah, just one more. Interesting. Sure. The unsexiest topic in the world is media management. And you find with these people, they don't want to do that, right? They want to make things that shine and sparkle and whatever. And so someone mentioned before here about the fact that you have a solution whereby just by doing their project and saving, they are automatically syncing it. It's the metadata is attached. We know everything we need to know about the project, and all the stakeholders involved can view and access that project. So it's almost subconscious collaboration tools. The way we media manage and store our projects are really interesting. And from my point of view, this is like having people in that same building, being able to walk around from edit suite to edit suite in the old days.
Well, just to add one more thing, I think it's great seeing this panel up here. We're in a very interesting transition, and we're seeing a lot of different opportunities, a lot of different technologies arrive. And I really like hearing what Gideon had to say. Yes, we're still building high-end projects using high-end systems, but we're also having clients trying to figure out how to do things differently. You know, they're looking for fan engagement, they're looking for interactivity at the end user capabilities, and figuring out these different ways to engage their audience slightly different, because you don't quite have the same experience. So we know things are changing and we don't know how it's going to shake out. But it's an interesting journey. And I think, as we all said, you know, just being open and looking at the technologies and trying to apply them. One of the challenges I find is, you know, I'm front and center on this, working with my clients, trying to explain to them. They don't quite understand the nuances of, oh, just put your GPU in the cloud. Mm-hmm. Well, it's not necessarily that easy. So it's this balancing act of understanding the technology, but also educating our clients, because they have no idea what's going on. They just hear these terms, remote production, and say, yeah, that sounds great. It's cheaper, it's easier, it should be the same. It's not. It's not the same. We all know that. So it's it'll just be, I think these, you know, this next year will be very interesting to see how things shake up and, you know, what technologies come out. But you know, it's great that the SVG puts these events on so we can all get together and collaborate and hear what other people are doing and touch base, because I don't think there's going to be one solution. There's going to be a lot of different approaches for different audiences, different levels of production. So,
sure. Thank you very much. Gentlemen, this has been terrific. Gideon, Steve, Nick, Andrew, Ken, it's been terrific for me. And if we did this in 12 months, we would have a vastly different conversation from what we're having today. Thank you all very much. And I would actually like to talk to you again in 12 months and see what's happened.
Sure.
Yes.
Thanks, Tim.
With pleasure.
Cheers. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye for now.
Thank you to Ken and the panel for sharing their thoughts and expertise with us today. The final part of today's show is a live panel session chaired by SVG Europe editor Heather Mclean. This panel is going to reflect on what has already been discussed before looking at how presentation and on-screen might evolve in 2021 and beyond. If you have questions for the panel, please use the Q&A tool that you will find at the bottom of your screen. We'll try and get to those during the session or at the end. I think that's quite enough from me. Over to you, Heather.
Hi, Will. Thank you. Thank you very much. I am Heather Mclean, editor at SVG Europe, and I'm lucky enough to be joined today by a bevy of industry experts who've actually been using presentation and on-screen technologies throughout 2020 to help get sport on screens for fans. So with me today, I have Pierre Seitz, Head of Productions at Infront. Hi, Pierre.
Good evening, everybody. Good to be here.
Right, and I also have Sally Richardson, Senior Producer and Director at BBC Sport. Hi, Sally.
Hello, Heather.
And I am also joined finally by Matthew Beal, Executive Producer at Aurora Media Worldwide. Hi again, Matthew.
Hi.
Hi. Great. Well, it's lovely to have everybody here. So first of all, what were your thoughts on Melchior's presentation or keynote earlier, and perhaps on the vendor panel that we've just watched, which was very interesting, actually? Let's go to Sally first of all.
Yeah, well, I think it was very interesting listening to Melchior and the fact that he highlighted different challenges in delivering virtually audio and vision for viewers at this time when we're all struggling with sport restarting and taking place behind closed doors, and how we can use that to still engage with viewers. The audio is obviously easier to deliver. in terms of being able to access real-time recordings from clean effects tracks from previous broadcasts. And the visual is slightly different, isn't it? And more challenging because it's a mix of the virtual and the real world. So it's more challenging. I think personally, my jury is very much out on the visual side of things in terms of virtual crowds. I think there's a long way to go yet in terms of developing what's available out there as a tool. And in the sports that I've been involved in since sport restarted, particularly rugby league, when that sport restarted behind closed doors, they engaged with fans and got them to send in life-size photographs of themselves that they then cut out and put in socially distanced settings within the stadia, which, you know, it works twofold. It actually creates almost like a real crowd, but it also keeps the fans involved and engaged in the sport, which for a sport like rugby league particularly is really important for the community, that they still remain involved, because that's one of the you know, the absolute bedrock values of the sport. And on the audio front, again, I think, you know, it's been great to have enhanced effects. I know it splits the audience. Some like it, some don't, and that's why in some cases broadcasters have offered two versions of audio for them to listen to, one without the effects and one with. But in using real recordings, again, you can actually create a more bespoke atmosphere for your audience and your fans by including things like team chants, song chants, country chants. If it comes down to things like the Six Nations that I worked on recently, having La Marseillaise mixed in with the match when France played Ireland, I think really is an easier way to make the audience feel as if there is a crowd there. And if you have that subliminal audio surround sound, literally and virtually, I think it helps the audience to forget, makes it easier to forget that actually these matches are being played within empty stadia.
Definitely. It's about the choice as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Turn it on or off. What about Pierre? How do you feel about what we've seen today so far?
Yeah, I mean, clearly La Liga has also a few advantages. One of them is definitely budget. So we always have to look at that, of course, as well. I mean, we are also working on a lot of properties which we're talking there about 6 camera production or something. So things like digital overlay for fans is really, to be honest, a little bit out of the question. On the other hand, I think it gives them, let's say, I agree with Sally on the visual. Is it necessary? Not. It's a decision to be made, but I think it gives them a head start to use that technology afterwards for other purposes. So on that side, I think it's quite smart to do it. But we see, for example, the Premier League is not doing it. It's basically banners over the seats, which give the clubs a bit more exposure for their sponsors and maybe make up for the missing income of the spectators as well. And on the audio, I have to say, yeah, it's a mixed bag for me. I personally actually would like to hear more of what happens on the pitch. So I'm not the biggest fan, to be honest. That's my personal opinion. Although when I'm if I would be allowed in a bar to watch with friends, then I would potentially appreciate the sound being there, because in that moment you're not interested in what's been happening on the pitch, but you just want rather to have this background noise. So I think it's a good way to have people choose either in a bar, privately, at home. And on the panel, I think it's really interesting to see what's possible and the vast developments in the past few months. Honestly, I mean, yes, we are in the middle of a pandemic. It's a crisis, and it shows as well that brings out quite creative minds and makes us develop things quite quickly. So that was good to see, even though a couple of things were a bit too techy for my mind, but that's only me, I reckon. So.
No, don't worry, you weren't alone. But it has been interesting being able to hear what the ref and the players have been going on about on the pitch. So I hope that stays even when we get the crowds back. Matt, what were you thinking?
I admire the Liga's position right at the top of the chat. They said the Liga's prepared to try any new tech and be first to market. And I think that's a noble attribute. And I think when you work in a marketplace like football, where the rules are the same around the world, everything's governed by FIFA, so Bundesliga, the Premiership, it's the same product. So if you want your product to stand out, you need to try new things. It's about presentation. And I think it allows you to maximize your assets, so your key players like Messi, etc. And in this instance, in bringing virtual fans, yes, it's splitting opinion. But if you don't take risks, you're not going to enhance a product quickly. And I think in the COVID situation, it's been about speed for a lot of people, and speed for big propositions to rework their output. And you're not going to get everything right in real time, and it's not going to please everybody. But I do admire them for going quickly, and I think that's a noble thing. And go back to the panel. Someone said there's nothing to be scared of the new normal, which I thought was a brilliant thing. It's amazing how quickly we've got used to everything. Yeah. And it is a cliche. It's a cliche to say necessity is the mother of invention. But more than ever in our industry over the last 6 months to a year, necessity has driven huge changes, which maybe would have happened over a decade or 5 years. And we've all got used to it pretty quickly, I think, will come out of that panel. And now it's about refining that and going into a post-COVID environment and taking our learnings and moving forward, particularly from the tech point of view. So it was very interesting to listen to their opinions.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And so looking at what we've been doing this year, specifically what you guys have been doing this year, what are the main challenges within presentation and on-screen technologies and workflows that you've faced this year? What has been difficult? How have you used these technologies, or have you been trying to enhance the viewing experience for fans at home? Start with Pierre.
I mean, the difficulties are, I guess, the same as for everybody, starting with international travel, sometimes to just be able to meet with tech suppliers to test things. That's already it. Obviously, a lot of events were cancelled, so there's also budget pressure in that sense as well. Then, and I mean, on the one hand, I think tech suppliers are inventing a lot, which is great, but also we have to be able to afford what's getting developed there. So I think there is a lot of there has been a lot of problems. Also remote production. I mean, it was impressive what BT Sports pulled off earlier this year, I have to say, as an example. And we see a lot of other things which are really great, which are good to see, like at FutureSPORT with their virtual studios, etc. So these are really awesome things. It takes as well a lot of effort, and there's a lot of hurdles to be taken. So yeah, it wasn't easy around this year.
No. And Matt?
I think the challenges have been short time frames of development. We've Aurora have taken something like Goodwood, which has been a traditional product in the past, the revival, and ITV have been a long-term partner of that. And they've had to take their model of what they want to present. And they come up with a concept called Speed Week, and we ran 2 streams for 54 hours over the weekend. And then we went 2 hours live a day on ITV. And it was remodeling a product and using tech to reach people in a different way and to stand that up. So time was a big constraint. I had to take an existing proposition and completely flip it. Mm-hmm. And what was also interesting is who we were speaking to. So if you go to something like Fest for the Speed that happens down in West Sussex, across that festival, there's 100,000 people on site. It's huge. And the media product we were creating across stream, across video on demand, across interaction stuff with Monterosa wasn't only speaking to what would have been the traditional media outlets, the broadcast, the viewer. It was speaking to the 100,000 people who couldn't come to that event, who was engaging with that event, who wanted to take something different from it, who wanted long-form media products. So to reskin and reshape a proposition in short time and use technology to deliver was perhaps the biggest challenge this year.
Yes, yeah. And Sally, over to you. What have you found challenging in presentation on screen this year? can't hear Sally for a second, so we'll come back to that. We'll come back to Sally. So what are the new on-screen innovations that you guys have actually been working on over the last 6 months to kind of get over these challenges? You know, what have you actually been playing with, trying out, doing? So Matt, over to you.
The studios have been a bit of an on-site revelation for us, and how studios interact to people off event. So going back to Google, we were talking a minute ago, we converted a huge hangar and put some Spitfires in there, and then we had a giant screen, and we're bringing in Zoom calls from Jay Leno and Keanu Reeves, as well as people on site. So it's connecting the outside world to the inside world.
Yeah.
The technology there isn't particularly new, but it was more widely used. And we've done a thing called 9 Day. We've done a thing called Berlin for Formula E, where we run half the season across 9 days. And again, the big studio proposition that we put in place connected to fans, fans engagement. We brought the fans into the actual broadcast graphics themselves. So if a driver crashed, everyone had their selected super fans. We see their reaction live in the feed rather than being a passive thing on a giant monitor behind the goal, for instance. And inside that, we used an aggregating tool called a Mondo. And that allowed us to bring in all the social media noise from TikTok and from Twitter, etc., and put it onto one screen and allow our talent to interact with that quickly. And I think that world of talking to live social media to a live presentation on a standard linear stream has always been a tricky relationship. How do we talk about it? And I think an aggregation tool helped us, because Vernon Caves had to pick stuff up, relate to our guests, have some banter around that, and bring the two together. And I think the challenge of connecting to the off-site world was a very big one this year.
And Pierre?
Well, within the group, we had as well digital overlay for the stands in the Coppa Italia final, which was a great success, I would say, technically. Again, if you like it or not, that depends on your point of view, I believe. Otherwise, as well, what you heard in the panel before with Tim Stott, a lot of user-generated content, athlete-generated content, self-shot content, which really helps at these times. And to be honest, Tim and his team started that already before the pandemic was on the horizon. So that helped us a lot to go. To get also through these times for, let's say, all our social media assets. Otherwise, to be fair, I spent a lot of time watching sport, potentially more than I'm used to, in order to see what other federations, leagues, broadcasters are doing, and you see there really amazing things. As I said before, the Eurosport Cube, the virtual studio, where you then with AR technology, you beam in the athletes from the US Open, and I think it was really great. And in principle, it was really good to see the creativity. Things get tested. Also, you have let's say you have not so many issues at the moment to ask for something to be tested, because people are open-minded. And then you will find out if it works out or if it doesn't work out, or if you have to change it and how you can then use it for the post-COVID era. So that was very interesting to see. And there's multiple things which happened. But again, on our properties as well, let's say there's limitations on certain ones as well to do these things. If you look at seasonal products like handball, Champions League, etc., there's really get the basics first done, and then we can start thinking about other things as well. Plus, host broadcasting is always a little bit something different to a unilateral product as well, I think. So there you have to really be careful what you do, that you don't overuse certain tools in a host broadcast production, because eventually the unilateral broadcaster, the rights holders, need to work with that product. So you can't, well, just basically you need to be careful, let's say.
Yeah, they want to play with it themselves, don't they, and add their own bits and bobs.
Correct, yes, and make it then stand out and make it their unique product as well. I think that is very important for broadcasters themselves as well.
Great. And Sally is back. Hey, don't worry, it's internet. Right, so before you disappear, please stay. We're just talking about what are the new on-screen innovations that you guys have been working on over the last 6 months. So maybe you can tell us about what the BBC has been up to.
Yes, I'm really sorry, everybody, for my lack of internet. I thought it's quite ironic that actually, just as I was about to answer a question about what have been the challenges in this.
There's one. Oh no, Sally. Joy of live. Okay, don't worry, don't worry. Okay, let's move on to the next question then. Yeah.
COVID, what have we been working on for the last 6 months?
Sally, are you still there?
I am. Yeah, I'm seeing you and hearing you.
Good. Okay.
Are you hearing and seeing me?
Yes, go for it.
Great. So could you just repeat the question? This is going very well, isn't it, everybody? Could you just repeat the question?
Over the last 6 months, what cool tech presentation on screen technologies have you guys been using?
Right. Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm really lucky to work with what I would consider to be the creme de la creme of the engineering and the broadcast technical world in BBC Sport. I can't speak with any great deal of confidence or in-depth knowledge or detail about what has come about in terms of innovations and how those have been delivered, because I can just sit at the end in the gallery with my hands open, you know, gratefully receiving the fabulous work that these geniuses have been working on, very, you know, serenely skimming across the surface of the water whilst the legs have been going like the clappers underneath. One of the things that I think has been most used probably across the whole of the BBC Sport department is obviously video conferencing technology. And when it works, we know it's great. And when it doesn't, we know what the pitfalls are. We've all just experienced it, or at least I've experienced it. One of my jobs within BBC Sport is as executive producer of Wimbledon. So when sport shut down in the first lockdown, obviously BBC Sport lost an awful lot of major events. You know, the diaries that were full and everybody's rotas that were absolutely chocker suddenly became very, very empty with the loss of Wimbledon, the Euros, the Olympics, for example. So what happens then is suddenly, of course, the controllers say, hang on a minute, sport department, you were about to be delivering hundreds and hundreds of hours of live sport, some of which is, you know, the highest rating in terms of bringing an audience to the BBC throughout the year. So what can you do to replace that? So suddenly people had to get their thinking caps on and decide what that content was going to look like and then how it could be delivered. And so for Wimbledon specifically, we had a lot of replacement programming to provide, and some of that was archive based, that was long form programming that was done using remote editing, and the tech team set up remote editing like lightning. It seemed to be there and was absolutely extraordinary, so that people could be socially distanced and work remotely, which I think is probably the first time that the majority of people within our teams had actually done that. And then we also had some live programming, which was our hour-long program that went out in the late afternoon, early evening, which was Sue Barker with guests, socially distanced, in a setting down at Wimbledon SW19, which I directed remotely. What does that then look like? In terms of program content, we want to try and bring in as many of the big faces that would normally be part of our team live on site at Wimbledon, but they're scattered all over the world. So then we start using video conferencing to do some live and some recorded, 2 ways, with Sue down at SW19, who was Zooming with people like Andy Murray, Martina Navratilova, Coco Gauff, Rafa Nadal, you know, which was just extraordinary that suddenly there they were, and with very little latency. You know, the connections were fantastic. And that's all being brought together in a gallery in Salford, which was extraordinary. The speed by which those innovations and that technology was delivered was testament to the brilliance of the technical team there, and actually quite a privilege to be a part of.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And overall for you guys, for all of you, how important do you think AR, VR, data and graphics and any other on-screen and presentation technologies have become this year? Start with Pia.
I think data is already more than important since a couple of years, to be honest. If you don't collect data yet of your sport, of your athletes, you're kind of missing out a little bit. And also I have to say, to put a, I don't know, 12th, 13th, 14th camera on a production is an easy job. I think data makes, that is another big step, I think, for any sport. I think it is about, though, how you present that data, and there you have to find really, I think AR, VR, those are really very visual elements, technologies to really make people understand the content better and easier and quicker, because you only have so much time to really to reach as well your audience, I think, because if a spectator doesn't understand the graphic he is seeing or she is seeing, it just means that they get frustrated with the product. I mean, I've watched some graphics, not even AR or VR, just plain graphics, and I couldn't understand them. I couldn't figure them out quick enough, and I hope it wasn't only me. But so this is very important. But this is as well where AR VR can really help and can support the editorial people like really well. I think that's quite important.
Back the storytelling up. Sally, have you got any comments on that one?
Yeah, just quickly, I think I'd absolutely agree 100% with what Pierre says. You know, it's and obviously with the BBC values in mind, we have to inform and educate, and we have the privilege of having, you know, very large available audience. So when it comes to things like our major events, such as an Olympics or a Commonwealth Games, you know, we've got viewers coming to us who would not be your regular sports fans. So that's where our responsibility and obligation to the license fee payer is to inform and educate them. And so the use of AR graphics is absolutely key to that. But I would say they have to be used appropriately. And I wouldn't ever want to fall into the, you know, no disrespect, but boys' toys category that a lot of people, you know, can talk about. Use it sparingly. There has to be a motivation for using it. Otherwise, just leave it out. Because if you're confusing people, actually, it's having a negative impact.
Just maybe on that one, when we heard about the keynote about La Liga, it is there, so they try it. This is I think that is maybe a little bit, as Sally said, you have to be mindful as well, and you have to use also these gimmicks and tools for a purpose, not just because it's there. I mean, yes, if you have the money, then it's fair enough, then try it out and have fun with it. But I think it needs to at least try to have a purpose and some advantages for who that product is directed to.
It's striking a balance between being inclusive and on the other side of the coin being exclusive. You're pushing people away because they're going, I'm sorry, I don't understand. Therefore, I'm not engaging with it. So you've lost me as a viewer.
Yes, yeah. This is definitely the year of experimentation with these things, though, isn't it? Because there was such a long time when nothing was happening. So, Matt, over to you on this one.
I think it's about AR and VR in particular. It's about who we're speaking to. And I think looking at the Ofcom numbers that come back during lockdown, etc., we saw a big rise in viewers. We saw a big rise in particularly older viewers moving over to SVOD and BVOD and onlining, and 16 to 34-year-olds. We know they're sat on YouTube. We know they're on different properties and consuming different ways. And I think we have to be cognitive of the fact that using the technologies, we're speaking to multiple people on multiple platforms who have different viewing habits at different times. And as Pierre said, you have to use it with a reason, but it allows you to have several tones of voice to connect with different people across a product. And I think that's the beauty of it, particularly as we see the huge rise in people of online gaming. And if we want to attract those guys back to, say, more traditional sports, we've got to think in their way rather than making them think in our way sometimes. And it doesn't have to be gimmick. It's just about engaging with new people and bringing people back into the more traditional playing field sometimes and crossing platforms And that requires some thought, but AR and VR are very much part of that strategy going forward, I feel.
And all these new technologies, they do take testing, which is one thing that the lack of people in stadiums has enabled people to do in some circumstances, but then the lack of sport and the lack of live people in stadiums has also kind of messed up that whole thing. How have you guys found the ability to test technologies out has been affected over this period? Pierre?
Well, to be fair, we didn't have a lot of chances, to be honest. I think on the broadcaster side, that's a bit easier because you have ongoing programs. But if an event is not happening and we are supposed to supply the host broadcast feed, then there's not a lot to test. But I think, just as a general note, I think the good thing about these times, about the past half year, that everybody was open to test and even to do live tests with things and just try it out and see what's the reaction. And then but that was the beauty of this. Everybody got a bit more confident in a way that okay, now is the time, now or never. So that I think is very positive.
Exactly. And Matt, any thoughts on testing?
Well, I'm sat in the middle of it at the minute, actually. I'm at NEP, so we're currently in sort of late to mid development of a thing called Extreme E, which BBC are taking. It's a electric rally series, a cousin of Formula E, and it's got sport with a purpose, and we're going to some amazing locations that have an environmental story, and we're highlighting those. It's a sport that is designed to be with no spectators. And so from the kickoff, we've had a new playbook we can go with, and we're developing AR and VR in real time. We're taking the data off the car. We've developed tracking technology, which is more reliable than it's been before, and applying data to it. Motorsport lends itself to that. So rather than what we saw a couple of years ago, that we'd be tracking the car and just be someone's name and a position, we're putting throttle, brake balance, human biotechnology around the cars. It's going around the people. And at the same time, with kind of point cloud technology, we have a virtual environment, which is live. So we can go away from traditional coverage of a sport and go into look inside a virtual environment and add another layer of data. We can strip it all back and enjoy a spectacular sport of some brilliant cars racing and rallying with the best drivers in the world. So the development that we've had has been swift. And we are faxing out at speed to make sure it's robust. But it's hugely exciting, and it's hugely exciting to take a brand new proposition, take some brand new developments in tech, work with some amazing people who are going to be spread out around the world, in Hilversum in Holland, to the hub back in London, to me in some beach in Senegal, covered in sand, to Alcamel over in Spain, all simultaneously, and we'll try and deal with the latency and bringing in all that technology into one coherent package. It's a joy to work with. It's an absolute privilege. So yeah, we've got an exciting journey ahead of us at the moment.
Yes, and looking ahead to 2021, this question is for you, Sally. I understand the BBC has been working on a VR studio. Tell us about that quickly.
Yeah, we have a studio within our building at Key House at Media City UK, which was developed when we first moved there, which is 11 years ago now. And so the time has come for us to move that on from being a real studio to being a green screen studio. So we're looking to deliver that hopefully by the end of March. And there are a lot of stakeholders involved in that. It's an in-house project, which is very exciting. And so it will become a true multi-platform, multi-purpose studio for within the BBC Sport department that will serve network programming, sports news, online, social media requirements as well. It's very exciting. Three exciting months ahead.
Excellent. Okay, and now time is pressing. So one last line, just one line each for 2021. From all the developments that have been sped up over 2020, what one thing would you like to definitely stay throughout 2021 and going forward into the future? Something that, hasn't been used traditionally previously. Let's go, Sally, first of all, just in case you drop out suddenly.
Well, I hardly dare say it. I've actually written it. I wrote this down in my prep. let's keep video conferencing for when it's appropriate. And for when it works.
Zoom in February.
Could I quickly just offer something to revert to once you know, we hopefully, you know, things have got back to normal, and that is that, you know, that we go back to being on site. And as an OB animal, I have to say that as a fully paid union member for OB work, but I just think particularly for sport broadcasting, in my experience, you know, being on site for presentation is great, because if you're doing remote working, there's a significant disadvantage for that collaboration with everybody, with all of the stakeholders. But importantly, at the heart of that, it has a negative impact, I think, on the output, which adversely affects what we're delivering to the audience.
Sure. Yes.
So I want to get back on site.
Get back to your OB cave. And Matt, to you, give us a line, one line.
Well, I'm a little bit on the opposite side of the fence on that one, if I'm honest with you. I think the options that remote working can open up for us, mostly in a hybrid format, so half on site, half back, and whatever balance that scale tips, can be huge. You know, we can't take 5, 10 Unreal engines on site with us. And we have a responsibility with carbon footprints maybe to not do that. And I think with change comes options and opportunities, and I think that will open up a new way of looking at things, and I think that's very exciting.
Great, thank you, Matt. And finally to Pierre.
I hope that post-COVID, the good spirit, the good cooperation between leagues, broadcasters, rights agencies, etc., I think as it was developed during these times at the moment really is keeping up. And that we don't fall back in more being protective about your product, too protective, etc., about the athletes, etc. I hope that everybody stays that open-minded, that we also in the normal times get maybe some tennis players. Honestly, when we worked on the French Open this year, they were there for hours and on different calls, etc. And that is something which I hope we will keep on seeing post-COVID. That is a big hope, to be fair.
Fabulous. I agree. Okay, thank you very much for all of my speakers. And now it's back to Will in the studio.
Thanks, Heather. I have to say I really enjoyed that. Lots of food for thought. Perhaps if there's something we can take from today and indeed the last 8 months, it's the need to be ever more open-minded and flexible. The importance of presenting data quickly in an easy to understand way, and of course the need for reliable broadband and Wi-Fi when doing video calls. Thank you to all our chairs and speakers today, our keynote speaker Melchior Soler, of course our sponsors Panasonic, our registration sponsor Gravity Media Group. We couldn't do this without your support, so thank you. Join us again tomorrow for day 3 of Future Sport, where we'll be looking at contribution and distribution. We have a Zoom side chat with Eurosport's Gordon Castle, and we'll get insight from DAZN, Sky Sport in Germany, and Premier League Productions, to name but 3. Before you go, at the end of this webinar, you will be directed to a feedback form. If you can spare a couple of minutes to fill it in, we'd be most grateful, as it will help us to continue to improve our online events. Thanks very much. That's it from me. Hope you enjoyed it. See you tomorrow, same time, same place. Take care.